Well, thank you. I'm very honored to stand here in front of you today. As the title says, I will share with you the power of collaboration. And I would like to share that power with you by sharing with you a personal story about the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my whole life, Greenland. It was the summer of 2014 when I decided that things had to change. I got on a plane to Copenhagen, and from Copenhagen I flew to mainland Greenland. And as soon as I got out of the plane, this is what I saw. A beautiful landscape of ice and snow, glaciers as far as the eye could see. I was stunned by what I saw. But I didn't just go there to take this beautiful picture. I went there to join a glacier expedition. Together with a group of 16 international scientists, we spent a month in remote Greenland to study this glacier for effects of climate change. And in the first week, me and that group of 16 scientists, we were dropped off in this remote fjord, together with our food, our tents, our stuff, everything for us to survive out there for 1 month. So every day we hiked up towards this glacier, and every day when we got to the glacier, we unloaded our equipment and we did our measurements. We measured how thick the ice was, and by doing that at different locations and at different times, we can say something about how climate change is affecting our climate. So every day we took this hike to this glacier 2 hours away, we did our measurements, and we walked back to our camps. Beautiful experience, and once we got back to our camp, we were often so tired, we took a nap in the sun, we had dinner. It was a very romantic and beautiful experience. But in the third week, something happened. From a day hard work at the glacier, we came back towards our camp, and as soon as we came around the corner and looked over the valley, this is what we saw. In the distance we saw a big storm coming, so we rushed towards our camp. We got on the satellite phone, which was our only connection towards the outside world, and we asked towards the people in the base camp, guys, can you tell us, give us some information about this storm? And that's what they did. They looked at the radar screen and they said, prepare yourself, because this is serious. And when you are that far out, you know that you gotta do something. So we had dinner, we packed our stuff, we tied everything secure, we packed our things, and we went to bed because that's all we could do, hoping that the storm would somehow pass by our camps and not hit us. But it actually did. That night the storm hit our camp and it got stronger and stronger, and the wind and the rain was hitting on our tents, and in the middle of the night we were woken up. Tent in the air, everybody out now! And then you get on in your survival suit, you look outside of your tent, and the first thing you see is 2 people hanging onto the tent that has all our equipment. And through the wind, the rain, the storm, the noise, you hear them scream, get some stones. So with all the adrenaline in your body, you find the biggest stone that you can find, you put it on the tent just to make sure it doesn't fly away. And as we were doing that, a gust of wind hits the second tent, and that tent is even more important. It has all our food in it. So we rush towards that tent and we try to put some stones on it. Somebody dives into that tent to get the ridge pulled down, and at that point the tent is no longer a tent, it's just a tarp covering all our stuff. And for 1 hour we battled the storm, and eventually we had to go to bed because that's all we could do. And the next morning we woke up and it was silent. The storm moved away, but it left its marks on the camp. Everything was wet, the tents were down, the camp was basically gone. So at that moment we decided to abandon the mission. It didn't make too much sense, it was too dangerous to go to the glacier anyway. We had to save ourselves and make sure that that night we would be safe again. So somebody volunteered and he said, let me rebuild the tent, because we need a roof over our head by the end of the night. Somebody else said, man, we gotta eat something, so let me go fish and find some vegetables, some mushrooms, something that we can eat. And somebody else said, man, my clothes are so wet, I'm cold. Let me build some sort of a structure and a fire so that we can dry our stuff. So everybody started to do something, and as sort of a miracle, by the end of the day, the camp was rebuilt and everything was working again. We had food in our bellies, we had a roof over our head, and we built a campfire just to make sure that we were warm again. And at that campfire we were discussing the irony of the situation, because we went there to research climate change, and maybe it was that aggravated the storm in the first place. And then it hit me. What we experienced that night is the same thing that the world is experiencing today. That night, a storm hit our camp, and the world now is experiencing climate change. A similar story. Because that night, the storm that hit us almost destroyed our house. And climate change currently out in our planet is destroying houses. Think of the people in Bangladesh that have to relocate because the seawater is rising. Think of the people that suffered from the Hurricane Katrina that have to relocate. But that night, that realization didn't make me feel sad. It made me feel positive because that night we also saw the solution. The power of collaboration. Because it wasn't the individual tent that made our camp be safe. It wasn't the food in our belly. It wasn't the fact that we had a campfire. It was the combined effort that made us be safe at that specific moment. And what I believe is that we all in this room in Eindhoven, in Holland, in the world should realize that we are all part of a bigger camp. Camp Earth. A camp that has so many different nationalities, beliefs, religions, just like us in that camp. Hell, we knew each other for 2 weeks. But once we tap into that power, the power of simply collaborating, we will not only better understand each other, better collaborate, but most importantly, we together can battle any storm. Thank you.